Yep.
Drew, lovely to see you again. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. First of all, I'd like to jump straight in and look at the concept of interims. It's such a big thing these days. A lot of people are doing it. But I'd be interested to know with you specifically, what has drawn you to this this way of working?
Sure. Thanks, Marcus. So I think everyone, like you say, has a different reason. I know some do it for the flexibility, to work around childcare, school hours, 9 to 3. I have other colleagues who do it because of the variety and the exposure to different companies and technologies. For me personally, both my uncle and father actually have biotechs, so it makes the legal and contractual side much easier.
And in terms of the specific area you work in, we go back quite a few years, and
Yeah.
I there's a fair bit of breadth there, but I think it'd be really helpful just to understand what is it you do specifically, just to break it down into the areas that you cover and what you offer.
Sure. Like you say, I think I have a pretty broad skill set. So across pricing, market access strategy, health economic modeling, computer programming, real world data analytics, but also real world evidence strategy. So I think the broadness really is kind of my USP, and also both from a skill set, but also geographical experience, right? So having worked and lived in China and Europe and North America, just having the insights as well from those different cultures and markets.
And just thinking about, you mentioned the breadth is a strength. Times I find that it's quite helpful to have a core area within that. In my mind, I know you perhaps more on the real world evidence side of things. Is that fair? Are there certain areas within that you say that's really a core strength of mine?
I actually do probably equal amounts of work across all those areas, to be honest. So, um, yeah, it's really being able to pull all those things together into like a strategy, right?
Okay. And I guess that's probably from my side one of the pluses of an interim. The fact that you have this breadth and you have the ability to draw on the area that's relevant at that time. Um, and just interested in the majority of my work is within biotechs or mid-sized pharma companies, companies that are evolving, that don't have a huge workforce. Just interested to understand maybe some of the work that you take on. What kind of scenarios do you come into? What kind of work have you found that you've been working in as an interim?
Certainly. So I think, as you mentioned, Marcus, small, mid-sized biotechs who really need someone knowledgeable across many different aspects of value demonstration, and also maybe who have budget constraints, so full time isn't really cost effective at that standpoint. So working with some of those smaller startups, also supporting kind of due diligence. So with investment companies or companies trying to purchase or
Okay.
license another asset, doing kind of fast turnaround pricing due diligence work. And then for large biotech, someone, if they need kind of someone who'll just get on with things, right? Whether that's due to staff shortages, maternity cover. And actually, some teams I find prefer to have an external consultant or freelancer for what they bring.
That's an interesting point. So why would they prefer? I guess it depends if you're used to the interim model, which obviously we are. But why would you prefer to use a freelancer over a permanent member of staff?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? And I think you really need to weigh the pros and cons, right? Like in health economics, the benefits versus the cost. On the cost side, you obviously have, freelancer, contractor, interim. We may cost more per hour, but I think we also bring a lot of other things, right? We bring a lot of, knowledge, experience from other companies, sometimes other industries. And we actually don't come with a lot of the time and costs associated with managing an FTE, right? Things like performance reviews, career development meetings, bonus discussions, bonus payments. Those take a lot of time and costs, which clients save with us. And another interesting point is, we're generally not looking to move on. And that, if the engagement experience is positive, we stick around if the client wants us to. I have a client now where I'm actually the most senior and most tenured member of her 20 plus team. So I'm also able to provide additional
Wow.
historical
Okay.
knowledge.
I guess from a client's point of view, that's potentially quite dangerous, is it not? That the guy that's not on payroll has a lot of the history, has a lot of the information. How do you manage that?
Well, I don't know why that would be a concern, right? Because as long as both sides are happy,
Okay.
then the contract can continue, right? So I think in some ways I'm less risk, right? Because I'm probably less likely to go anywhere if everything works out and everyone's happy.
And so from your side, in terms of this, because I know we touched on this the other day, but this client that you've been working with for quite a while, um, why have these people come and gone? I'm just thinking about why. I mean, for you, there's a clear benefit from the client. You know, there's a lot of logistic stuff they just don't have to do, and you clearly good at what you do. But in terms of you, you've stayed around with them. Why is that?
I just really enjoy the client. We work very well together, and yeah, it's a good working, positive relationship, and the work is very interesting.
Good. Is there anything else? I mean, in terms of your skill set and working as a contractor. I mean, one of the conversations I find myself in sometimes with biotech clients that maybe aren't used to the model of working with a freelancer is, it's almost trying to demystify it. But how complicated is it? I mean, in terms of the actual, getting to a point where you're having a discussion with someone to working. I mean, because a lot of people think it's incredibly expensive, and it is, these people aren't truly invested. Do you find that you're setting a mindset sometimes in terms of some of the engagements you've had?
In some ways, I think probably most companies are used to either having consultants work on projects, very fixed, pieces of work that they almost outsource, and then the alternative is kind of having someone
Okay.
completely in the company as an FTE, right? I see myself as kind of in the middle, where I'm quite dedicated to the
Okay.
team, but also being able to kind of do and run things independently, right? So bringing that external knowledge while kind of being, part of the team essentially. And I think, it is perhaps
Yeah.
not, and most a lot of clients aren't as comfortable or aware of that and what that can bring and the pros and cons. But I certainly find that once clients realize the benefits and the pros and cons, it works very well, right?
I think that flexibility piece. I mean, that's the bit. I think particularly if you're a biotech and you're in this place where, are you building? Are you, there's some change happening usually, which is when we're coming in. Often it's not huge. Huge. I mean, sometimes it is, but often it's not clear what they need to do. So that
Yeah.
flexibility is huge, really. It's you know, it, it's something that I've seen more and more of the last few years. More and more people are doing it, and
Yeah.
often it's through circumstance has meant this is a way of working. It's become quite accepted. Um, but a lot of cases, I mean, sometimes I'm finding with clients they are perhaps not sure where to position, the interim solution. So, for example, I've got a client I'm thinking of where they did some pricing work commissioning. Now, traditionally, they may have gone to a specific pricing agency to do that. Through the course of the discussion, we actually found someone that was a pricing expert. They'd already been a senior pricing person. And so, in effect, they were kind of the vendor, but a person. So
Mhm.
there's a real breadth I've found with how people are being used. But that's something I find that I'm often maybe challenging that perception. They didn't
Yeah.
necessarily realize they could use a person in the way that they may actually work with a vendor. And
Yeah.
you've had that.
Yeah. And I think there's a sweet spot, right? I think if
Okay.
the piece of work is so extensive where you need, hundreds and hundreds of man hours, different people, you're doing, building loads, quite complex things, maybe hundreds of payer interviews and things, then you really need an agency, right? You're not
Yeah.
going to be able to have a freelancer do that. But I think if it's, if you're small, medium biotech, or if it's a one or two products and you have very kind of, you know, targeted needs where actually one person could do that work, and actually being kind of
Mm-hmm.
a freelancer, you're also then part of the team. So anything that's quite complex with internal politics or a lot of internal decision making, it can actually be beneficial to have this model, right?
Yeah. And you've got that sort of independence from the
Hmm.
politics. You're
Yeah.
there to do the job. Great, great. Fantastic. Well, today they were the main points I wanted to cover with you. So I think we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much, Andrew, for having a chat. I'm always fascinated by interims, and I love it. Everyone I work with these days is working or has been, or I'm, supporting people into taking the path of an interim,
Mm-hmm.
most of those people love it, and they are not turning back now. So thank you for your time, and we'll obviously be in touch in terms of our ongoing discussions. But for now, very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Marcus.